This is Becoming Her, a podcast for survivors of abuse or assault to share their stories. I'm your host, Emily Kemp, and I'll be having a conversation with a different survivor each week. I want to be sure to include a strong trigger warning with this podcast. The content we discuss includes topics related to violence. Listener discretion is advised. All right. Hi, and welcome to the podcast Becoming Her. Thank you so much for being here. And I know that this podcast will be a little bit different because you want to remain anonymous. So I want to respect that. And I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself or anything like that. So I think the easiest thing to do is just to kind of like have you begin telling your story wherever you want to begin telling your story.
Yeah. Hello.
You got it.
So I am a survivor of child abuse. My father was physically and emotionally abusive. And then my mom, I was like thinking about this today, actually. I was like, was my mom always emotionally abusive, or did she become emotionally abusive along the way just from like remaining in that situation and adapting that norm? But I would classify both my parents as like abusers.
Okay.
And it's something that is still kind of to this day. I still talk to both my parents. Like I have lengthy phone conversations with them. I go see them. I was thinking about going to see them in a couple of weeks because they just sold our childhood home. I was going to go home to help them out with getting everything ready, but I'm not going to go. But yeah.
Was there any particular reason that you decided not to go? Was it?
I'm working on boundaries right now. So
yeah.
That's part of it. Yeah. So that was really it. My mom was kind of like, well, I don't want you to come out here if you're going to be in a bad mood. And I was like, okay, cool. So I guess I don't need to come.
Yeah.
Then. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a really complicated relationship when the person who abuses you is also your caretaker.
Yeah.
You know? And I think when we talk about abuse and abusive relationships, obviously a lot of people think about romantic relationships, but there can absolutely be abusive dynamics and power and control differentials present with parental relationships or other familial relationships or other relationships that aren't romantic. So I think your story is really important, and I'm really grateful that you're here to share it. So yeah, I guess I kind of want to just have you share, where did it all start for you, or kind of what does your story look like?
Yeah. It's funny because I don't talk about it a lot, like ever, really. And it's also funny because a lot of my friends have actually pointed out abusive patterns to me that I don't really notice because these are my parents. Like I grew up loving them and having them love me because they do love me in their way, I guess. I don't know. I'm redefining love as well right now. But I think one of my earliest memories was when I was probably, I want to say around 8, and I was at school and I just started crying on the playground. And my friends really wanted me to go talk to the school counselor. And when I went to the counselor, they're like, well, we'll have to talk to your parents. And I was like, nope, hard pass. No, thank you. One, I didn't want to get my parents in trouble, like, yeah, I didn't want to do anything. And growing up, we had this kind of like us against the world sort of mentality. My parents were like, whatever happens in the house, like this is our business, this is our stuff. So to talk about it felt like betraying them in some ways, and like that was just the norm, and this is just the way things are. And so I need to just kind of like grow up and stop being so like weak and stop, like this is my family, and families are complicated and families are hard, but it's your family and you don't like sell out your family. But I definitely tried to run away a couple times. I like hid in my friend's closet. My parents found me because I got a bad grade in one class, and I just knew what would happen. And yeah, I'm so vague because I don't talk about it. I don't talk about things.
That's totally okay. And you don't have to dive into any details or talk about anything that you're uncomfortable with. I think what you're saying is totally relevant and really poignant. And I mean, I think with this term intimate partner violence, we often think of it again as being romantic, but when you look at the way that these dynamics can play out in other relationships, what the common theme is that intimacy. And like trust. Yes. And that's what makes it so complicated. Yeah. Especially in familial relationships. Yeah. So I hear that you have these memories from early childhood of things, like kind of noticing that things were different than other people's dynamics, other family dynamics, and then feeling like a loyalty to your family.
Yeah, definitely. And not even really noticing, because I think my mom was always like, everyone's got their shit. Like she's so not really knowing what was going on with anyone else, but feeling like I had to protect what we had. I had to protect my dad and protect my mom, and everything was always for the best. Like my sister is currently visiting my parents, and she was like sending me texts, and I'm now really glad that I'm not going home, because my mom was like, if like my sister's like, you're really controlling and you're really manipulative, and my mom was like, no, I'm not, because if I actually controlled your lives, you guys' lives would all be much better. And
wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and my mom doesn't think that she's abusive, doesn't really identify with that at all, because for her, everything she's ever done was for the best. Like she just wanted the best for us, and she loves us, and if we refuse that, then we are refusing love. And so it's a very interesting and kind of like complicated thing, trying to like, that's why I'm like kind of working on my own definition of love right now, because like, is toxic love even love? Like my parents, you know, I've had friends be like, oh, your parents do love you as best as they can love you, but you know, do people who really love you hurt you, or maybe they do? It's just,
or is that not love?
Is that not love?
Or is it both and? Or is it either or?
And is it like failing of boundaries on my part and things like that? Because so many people are like, well, if you do this and if you do that, then this won't happen. And so it's just like, there's something that I'm doing to invite that sort of treatment and that sort of love. But yeah,
as someone who has seen a lot of abusive relationships, my instinct is to say no. Because because nobody invites that kind of treatment ever. And you are their child, right? So you like, from the day you were born, there was a power differential. Yeah. Right? And they took advantage of that power differential because you were dependent on them. And so that, you know, obviously creates a lot of really complicated bonds, but no, no one deserves to be abused ever. Yeah. But I also hear this, like, this really complicated reality that like multiple truths can exist at the same time. Yes. Which is very hard to sort through and understand. Yeah, definitely.
And I also have like bipolar disorder, and so that came into play in later years, and like my teen years and everything like that. And like, I'm a person who loves to do research and loves to read and loves to like figure things out, and which is both good and bad, because sometimes I think I pigeonhole myself. But most survivors are often abusers in relationships, or they get in relationships where they're abused.
Either or. Yeah, they become either the victim or the perpetrator. Yeah.
And so like, also having the disorder diagnosis, there was always, that became part of it for my family, of like, this is something you're doing to us by like not being happy and not being like, why can't you just not be sad, and why can't you just not be so I don't know where I was going with that.
No, I mean, I think that's another layer, right? Yeah. And I've heard many survivors talk about
that come into play with that relationship, and then how that portends into other relationships,
and one other place where they could potentially have power over you.
Exactly. Yeah. And tell you how you should fix it and how you should be better. I think that's like the one thing with my parents of just there is this constant being not good enough and too much all at the same time.
Interesting.
Like if I was just quieter, or if I just did more, or if I just did, you know, like if I was just right, then things wouldn't go wrong. If I just was like, you know, as my mom said, if we did what she said, then our lives would be better. And it was kind of just, yeah, if we did what we were supposed to do, then everything would have been okay. And even sometimes now it's like, oh, if I make myself small enough or big enough or quiet enough or loud enough or whatever, like if I do what's exactly needed for that moment, then things wouldn't be the way they are and things would be okay. And people wouldn't behave certain ways or treat me certain ways because
like somehow you are asking
somehow I'm asking for it by not being the person that I should be. Like, why can't you just be more while also being less?
Which me just stop you.
Being enough.
Yeah, let me stop you for a second. It's so interesting because I have heard this very same dynamic play out in other abusive relationships that aren't parental. So I am one person in particular is popping into my mind who told me a story about how her abuser would always tell her that she was like a stick in the mud and not fun. You know, who would want to be around you? So then they'd go out and she'd try to have fun and like, you know, express herself and laugh and be joyful. And then he would berate her for being embarrassing and having too much fun and being too much and too loud. Yeah. So you can't win. No. You know, and it's not about an actual like standard, like gold standard of being. It's about just making you feel like you're never enough all the time. Yeah.
But it's weird, at least, I don't know, there's so many things with my mom and with my parents that I hear it and it's like, oh, that makes sense. Like, yeah, like, why did I do this? Because it's your parents, you know, right. Or that's the ideal, especially growing up in the 90s and you have all these like great TV shows with like the nuclear families and the parents are just like giving those like hard truths to their kids, like Boy Meets World and like Family Matters and all these. And it's like your parents care about you and they love you and they just want the best for you. And that's what my parents tell me. They just want the best for me. They just, you know, they've made all these sacrifices for my life and they just want me to be my best. And so there's this guilt that
it's very confusing.
Like, why can't I just be the person that they want me to be? Like, why can't I live up to that standard? Like, why, with all the potential, with all their sacrifices, with all the things that I have, why, like, can't I just be good enough? So, yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of like your foundation with your parents. This is like where
it's a foundation with a lot more.
Yeah. So that's kind of whoa, you're reading my mind. That's kind of where I was going. Is like how do you feel like that dynamic or that like foundational experience that you've had with your parents has like played out in other relationships, or has it, or what effect has it had on you becoming the person you are? Big questions. Yeah.
Big questions.
Yeah. You know, super easy to answer.
Yeah. Well, I avoid a lot of relationships. I think I have some good friendships, things like that. But it's very hard to trust. It's very hard to feel okay to be vulnerable. I remember a couple summers ago when my good guy friends was like, why can't you just let me help you? Like, why can't you just accept my help? And I was like, because I don't need your help. But there's this, it's hard to let anyone be there because I should be able to take care of it myself. And also with my parents, everything was conditional. So if I want something, then I have to behave a certain way. And even after I get it, if they're not happy with me, then it can be taken away. So it's just like,
you're like constantly on shifting sand.
Yeah. So
how do you trust? How do you have a stable foundation?
Yeah. So to just take care of myself and be by myself and not like bring anyone down and affect anyone with myself, because, you know, like I'm not like, who would really want to be around me and who would really want to deal with me? And, like, I have to just be so much better than I am for someone to be around me. Mm-hmm. So.
And those were the messages you were getting from.
And there's still ones that I'm working through. It's like a constant kind of process of, and it's funny, because a lot of people are like, oh, you just need to love yourself more. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably, like part of it. But I think I love myself a lot, just because there's a lot of things that I wasn't supposed to do or be that my parents heavily disagreed with and, disowned me. I've been disowned multiple times. Multiple times. Like, one of my friends was like, oh, you're disowned again. Like, surprise.
Shouldn't
like,
that only happen once?
After a while, you're like, oh, okay. Like, I'm still okay. I've been disowned. But, I haven't changed. Like, I've done things and it's like, okay, I'm just going to do it no matter what. But there's still this, like, gut reaction when things happen. So of like, oh my God, my mom was right. Like, I shouldn't do this. And so
something like deep,
it's like a tug of war.
Like a deep inner voice that wasn't yours.
And a verse. Yeah.
And now you're trying to find yours and kind of fight with each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's been like years. Like, I moved away at 18 and it wasn't just like my parents, because people become used to you the way you are. Like, the persona I created for my family is a persona that was me, and so friends get used to it and people get used to it, and the minute you step outside that, it's not just your abuser that kind of takes insult to that, but other people, because they are like, why are you acting like this, and like, why are you being this way, and like, how can you be so yourself? Like,
right. But to them, but they're not, because they don't really know the real
like, how can you be so free, because they're so used to you being like buttoned up and closed down and just listening and being there. One thing I've noticed is anytime I do things for myself is when people are really surprised, because I'm not there for them anymore, because I'm not 100% there for them, because that was with my parents. My parents actually like divorced for a while and got back together. And while they were divorced, my mom still made us spend time with my dad, because she felt like a father figure was a really strong, something that we really needed. Yeah, it was really important, because it's something that she didn't have. But also my mom had gone back to school and she went to work. And even though I'm not the oldest child, I'm the middle child, like, I was the one who cooked dinner and did the laundry. And like, even for my mom would be, before my parents even got divorced, my mom was like, what do you think I should do? And I was like, I think you should divorce Dad. And I think it was like 10 or 11 at that time. So it was always like, what can I do to make this work? And what can I do to make this easier? And what can I do to be there for you? And it's really hard to make decisions based on what I want, because it was never about what I wanted. One, because what I wanted didn't really matter with my parents, and also what I wanted didn't make things easier. And so to make things easier, it's not about what I want. It's about what everyone else wants. And part of that's middle child syndrome. Part of that's like, growing up in an abusive home.
And part of that is you being on a one-sided relationship with your parents, where you were giving more than you were receiving. Because that's that is in essence what a power differential means, is that, one person has more power, the other person has less power. So you were giving, trying to placate, trying to please. And they were taking, exploiting, manipulating. And so you were like conditioned to be that person who will give and not expect to receive in return, which is unfair.
Yeah. And it's just funny how it plays out in other things as well.
Yeah.
We're kind of trying to find that voice. Or not really find it, but let it have more like volume.
Sure.
So
to be okay with taking up
space.
Be
okay with it, and to be okay with taking up space in other people's lives. Because I do a lot of things alone. I love like going on road trips and traveling, and I'll do a lot of things alone. And there it's okay to take up space, because like no one else is there, and so it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if I just cry all day, or if I like want to eat all day, or if I want to run around, or it doesn't matter, because it's mine time. But taking up space in other people's lives is just, it's like interesting. And whenever it goes badly, which it does, because that's
because
people.
being human is
because
really
it's
hard.
being human. But it's harder for me to also rebound from negative feedback, because I'm like, oh my god, I like ruined everything. Like I definitely have used the phrase like, oh, I ruined this person's life by being a part of it. Because
it's like that inner voice.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, if I had just been less whatever I was, or if I had been more whatever I wasn't, or if I had just been basically anything but myself, then it probably would have been okay. But I wasn't me, so or I was me, and that was the problem.
Right. And I want to back up and just like repeat a phrase that you said that I think is really beautiful. But like, if I could have been less of whatever I was and more of whatever I wasn't, like that's really powerful. And I think it's a really common experience for people in general, you know, because being human is hard and being alive is hard. But then when you have the experiences that you've had, that voice takes up so much more space. It has so much more power, because those were the messages that were being reinforced by your parents, who are the people who you should have the most support from and who should let you be you the most, you know? So that's hard. That's hard to carry through with you into the rest of your life and other relationships. So I just want to acknowledge that. But I'm interested to know too a little bit more about how like your relationship with your parents has progressed over the years. So you've talked a lot about that like early childhood years, but what did that transition look like? So rocky?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways there's been no transition, especially with my mom, just because there's like zero acknowledgement that she's an abuser. So it's kind of the same. I think if it's changed at all, it's just like more boundaries on my end. Sure. With my dad, because so in high school, I actually had a couple of suicide attempts, and one of them during my inpatient treatment, we had to have a group there, like a family therapy. And so there was, you know, this confrontation of my dad and
in front of a counselor.
Yeah, in front of a counselor. And so my dad's the villain. Like, he's the known villain. My mom is in some ways abusive of him because he's like the one that like ruined everything and was just like this horrible man. And so in some ways he's like really accepted that and acknowledged that and tried to move beyond that. But in some ways he is who he is. Like, he's never...
He can't.
Yeah, he can't. My older brother has 2 kids, and, you know, we're like scared to leave my dad alone with them and things like that. So it's just like it never... And even after therapy, like my senior homecoming I didn't go to because like my dad was like choking me on my bedroom floor and my brother had to pull him off of me. And it's like, it's something that's just like ever present of like, oh, it's dad, he might like lose his shit. But now he's also like this, he's like 75 or something. My dad's like an old man. He has like, and just watching my dad get old and watching the way my mom treats him and knowing my dad's upbringing and everything, in some ways I pity him more than anything. Like I feel very sad for my parents more than anything else, just because they don't seem happy. But they're so like deep in their lives. They're so deep in who they are, and they, you know, especially my mom, like refusing to acknowledge like who she is and what she's done, how her choices have influenced her relationships. I'm not really angry, but anger is also something like I'm not very good at. So it's something I'm actually working on.
Trying to be a little bit...
Trying to be angry.
Yeah, more outraged about it.
Because, yeah, like sometimes like, oh, wait, no, that person actually fucked up. Like, because I'm very good at being like, especially because like the first people in my life who I've had to forgive were like my parents over and over again. And so there's always this like, oh, they did it because they love me. And oh, they did it because, and even my mom has said like over and over again, like, if you are hurt by anything I did, that's because you choose to feel hurt. Everything I've ever done is because I love you and I want the best for you. And in some ways, that's true.
I mean,
like,
that
it's
message
true.
gets in there.
Like,
Yeah.
because that's how that's her truth.
Right.
And
but anger on your part can be
but
an
anger could be like, oh wait, no, that's like a really, you know, like
you
no.
can swear, you can say the F word.
Cool.
I saw you like
I said
mouthing
shit,
it,
and I'm like, oh, is that okay?
like, you drop all the F bombs you want.
Sweet swears.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
There was something I wanted to go back and talk about regarding your dad, about like this semi-acknowledgement of the things that he has done, but also you were like, you know, he is who he is.
Yeah.
And that's actually really a really common pattern that we see with abusive people, is that like by the time that they've gotten to a certain point, they've escalated to a certain level of violence, there aren't any effective interventions for them. And the best intervention is prevention, right?
Yeah.
So how do we like keep people from experiencing those outcomes in the first place? And there's so many factors there, and I don't really have an answer for that, but I just wanted to acknowledge that, like, yeah, you know, I think you're right. He is who he is.
Yeah.
And your mom is who she is.
Yeah, she is who she is.
And there's
like,
they can't correct themselves at this point.
Yeah. I think it's like a struggle in our family, just trying to find some sort of stasis, because everyone wants everyone to change. Like, everyone wants everyone to be different. And my mom was like, she's like, oh, you're so angry at your dad. And I'm like, no, I'm actually not. Like, because I'm probably more angry at my mom than I am at my dad. And I'm angry at other things that have happened in my life more recently. And my mom just chooses to, you know, my mom knows everything. But, you know, I think, yeah, some people, in some ways we are who we are. And if you're going to change, you have to want to change. You have to acknowledge things and be like, damn, I want to be different. And most people don't want to do that, you know, because it's painful and terrifying and horrible. It is. Change is a lot of work. And so knowing my parents and feeling like I have to keep them in my life, because I do feel like I have to, I'm still wondering whether or not it's a choice. But because I feel like I have to keep them in my life, and I feel like they will be in my life forever, and I have to figure out a way to, you know, come to grips with that, then it's like, okay, well, what can I do? Because my mom's going to be my mom forever, and hopefully every time I see her, I'm not on this like emotional roller coaster of just like horribleness. So how do I make this relationship work? How do I acknowledge who she is and accept who she is, but also create boundaries so that my life is mine and my life isn't about who I should be or who I'm not,
or she thinks you should be. Which I heard you do. You were like, I thought about going home, and then I thought again about it. It's like, no, thank you. And that's you.
Yeah, that was a very big.
Boundaries.
That was a very big boundary for me. Just being like, and I had some other plans fall through, and I'm like, oh, I should just call my parents and be like, oh, I'm going home. And then I was like, no, that's not my default. My default is not to go take care of,
to acquiesce
them,
to them,
and to like be there for them and to do whatever,
and to give up my power to them,
because I don't really want to go, and that's hard. I didn't even really say that. Like, my mom was just like, oh, you just seem like you don't want to come, so I don't want you here, and I don't want you here if you're going to be depressed. And I'm like, cool, well, I'm depressed a lot, then. So I guess I'll stay in Montana and be depressed here. Cool, thanks for the out. And taking it, because usually I'd argue with her and still go, and like, you know, because it's like, oh, well, I don't want to be selfish, right? Because I was always worried of like being selfish. Like when I first moved away, I was like, oh, you're so selfish.
Yeah, and I hear it's like when these people who have conditioned you to give your power to them ask you to give your power to them, it's like a relearning of how to say no. I won't give you my power. I'm going to keep my power and do what I need to do for myself, which is like, it's hard. That's hard to learn without having gone through what you've been through.
It's like learning how to I think so I currently have this like amazing psych who's I've been with for like 2 years, and he's just always asking me what I want, and I fucking hate that question. I hate it because like I never think about what I want. I don't. I'm like, well, what does my sister want? What does my mom want?
Right.
And what does this guy want? And what does like my friend want? What do my roommates want? And I really hate that question because I don't think about like what I want is to make other people happy. Like I really, that's what I want. I want people to just be fine. But you know, now that's like a thing that I ask myself, well, what do I want? Do I want to go? Like, do I want to? It's like, oh, not really. And it's just like, so just finding that of like, well, what do you want? And
like
making it okay to have like a
choices.
want, like that is not dependent on anyone else, and recognizing that it's okay if other people are upset. Because that's not my job,
right?
To make sure that everyone's okay.
Your responsibility for another human being only goes so far.
Yeah.
And you can really only be responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
Which is empowering
Yeah.
and hard and
like,
scary.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about what this process of like finding you and taking back your power and asserting those boundaries, like what does that look like for you? What has that felt like for you?
So I had a relationship last year, and it was actually really shitty. Not the relationship itself, but he actually had an ex who I've now like realized is like a completely abusive human being, and kind of revisiting my abuse as an adult. In my first intimate romantic relationship was really eye-opening and just what I need to do for me, because I had basically like living in this small town and having so many mutual friends. She just kind of like convinced everyone that I was this horrible seductress that took him away, even though they were already broken up, but whatever. But so I had a lot of friends like send me threats that if they saw me, they would beat my ass, that I was a slut, that I was a whore, that I was an evil temptress, that, you know, and one of the only girl in Montana who like I trusted with the fact that I had like an abusive background and that I have bipolar disorder, like she told this to the girl, and they're like, you're this dark, like horrible person with no emotions, and like doesn't matter how much therapy you go through, like you'll always be a horrible person.
Like
and
really hitting every
just
insecurity
really, yeah, it
you
was just
have.
really
Yeah.
like everything, and I was like, okay, like first relationship, here's all the
Not
things I
going the
really
way I
need
really hoped
to
it would.
learn.
Yeah.
And
Ouch.
I've lived a lot of places in between leaving home and coming here, and this was like the first place that felt like home. And after everything, it really felt like home, because I felt like I had to be quiet and I had to shrink, and I had to like, you know, I couldn't go to like certain bars anymore, and I couldn't be out anymore. I couldn't say hi. Like I didn't like, should I say hi? Should I not say hi? Should I like do, like I didn't know where I could be or what I could do. And just having so much shit dumped on me at once, and it being like kind of utterly ridiculous, was a really huge like growing point for me in a lot of ways, because it was just like, what? No, like there's definitely, I don't know, in the last like year I had to say goodbye to a lot of friends and family, like that I loved and that I thought loved me, and I think, you know, like I guess in their own way they love me or like whatever. But it was just like such a challenging situation that forced me to reckon with like, what do I need and what have I learned, I guess, over the years being in and out of therapy, and just like finding myself. Those are air quotes. No one saw them, but they're there.
You let them know.
Air quotes.
Whatever
finding myself.
yourself means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just being put in such a like a hard situation, and it's like, I don't know, it's like any other tests. You know, it's kind of like being forged by fire and things
There's
like
like
that.
painful growth.
Yeah, it's like painful growth. It was a horrible experience, and I'm still learning from it and growing from it, but it's a lot of saying no, and it's a lot of saying like, what do I want? Like, what do I want? Do I want to talk to my sister today? And it's such a simple question. But
it
you
can
know,
hold a lot of weight.
it can hold a lot of weight, and being like children of abuse, like everyone takes on different characteristics and
different
like
roles in the dynamic. Yeah.
And when the whole thing was going on with my recent relationship, my sister was like, well, you know, you kind of deserved it because you didn't do enough. You didn't do anything to prevent it. Like, why would you think anyone would have your back? And, you know, like,
it's like you have to fight
and she was
through.
like, I don't care. And it's like,
you gotta fight through this narrative.
And so many people
again.
telling me they didn't care. It was really like, wait a minute. So why do I care about any of you? Like, wait, no, I deserve more. I think I deserve more. Yeah, I deserve more. You know, like that's the question of like, because I think it's a question at first. Right. And it's that little,
and then it becomes
it's that little voice of just like, yeah, like, wait, this isn't right. No, this isn't right. Like, this isn't right. And just kind of like repeating it to myself. And sometimes it takes a little longer to get to those stories, you know, that you tell yourself, because there's this gut reaction that you've learned growing up or like through this experience of just like, you don't deserve this and you're not good enough for this and you're like horrible, and if you were just a different person or a better person, then everything would have been okay and you would have ruined everyone's lives and blah, blah, blah. Right. And then after a while, that story, I guess it just gets old.
Yeah.
It just holds like less weight, and there's enough cracks. You know, like I said, I have a great like psych that I've been working with for like 2 years. I wouldn't even have gone into the relationship, my like romantic relationship, if he hadn't been there, and like just having him there throughout it to kind of be that voice of doubt for the negative self-talk of being like, well, is that really, and like being like, yeah, no, yeah.
And not just self-talk,
yeah,
but like the negative narrative that has been implanted in you from the people who like created you. And that's hard to shake.
That is. And then just having friends, and most of my close friends live very far, like all different parts of the country. But I think so much of it is also being willing to listen to narratives other than the people that you trusted the most. You know, like I love my parents, I trust them, and that was always the voice I think I put above any other. And letting there be doubt, letting there be like, maybe they don't know everything, and maybe this other person who's known me this long and has this perspective, like just being open to that. Like doubt in so many ways can be good, because it's just like,
it doesn't have to be doubt for yourself. Yeah, it can be doubting the bullshit narrative.
Doubting the bullshit narrative, because it's so easy to accept that truth and to say like, oh, that's right, this is what it is, and like they're my parents and they said it and they know me the best. And I've definitely said that. I'm like, it's my mom who knows me better than my mom. And my best friends have been like, I mean, anyone other than your mom knows you better than your mom, because your mom doesn't know you.
And also, who knows you better than yourself?
Yeah. And they're like,
no one should know them. No other person should know another person over that individual knowing themselves, you know?
And just like taking
That's hard
back
to trust.
taking back that kind of like ultimate respect and ultimate power and ultimate like trust in someone other than myself, and just being like, and letting, just other influences, whether it's my friends or like books and music, and just like there's so many places that you can find a voice and a platform to kind of like stand on and find truth in, because
period. So I kind of want to just wrap up by asking you if you could give any message out there to someone who might be listening, who can resonate with your experience, or who potentially has been through something similar to you. What would you want to tell them?
I got really good advice one time, to just take things one day at a time. If you can't take it one day at a time, take it 1 hour at a time, or 1 minute, or 1 second. And I think that's just it. Just trying to not put so much pressure on yourself to heal, to be better, to be stronger, because no matter where you're at, that's where you're at. And that's the only place you really need to be. So, yeah, just give yourself like till the next second or the next minute or the next hour, the next day, the next week. Just give yourself something to hold on to and to work through and let that be it. And yeah.
I mean, I can guarantee you that anyone who heard that is like, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being willing to share your story. I know it can be so hard, but there's a lot of wisdom in your words, and we just really appreciate you being here.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's it. It's easy. It's over.
Yay.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to check out our online community at weareher.net. If you or someone you know has experienced abuse or assault, you can always call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-799.